The screaming winds of Corvan Prime had shaped more than just the landscape over millions of years. They had forged a species that believed suffering was the only true measure of worthiness. High Chancellor Vorth pressed his scaled face against the reinforced viewport of his fortress, watching the eternal storm tear apart the rocky peaks below. Each lightning strike reminded him why the Corvan deserved to rule the galaxy. 3,000 years ago, 5 species had crawled out of hell itself and claimed their right to dominance. The Galactic Deathworld Pact was born from a simple truth that no soft-world species could understand. Only those who had conquered death deserved to command life. The Corvan had battled winds that could strip flesh from bone. The Thraxi had evolved in swamps where the very air burned lungs. The Velkin had learned to hunt in frozen wastelands, where warmth meant death. The Ixari had rebuilt civilization on radioactive ruins. The Keth had conquered the crushing depths, where pressure could fold metal like paper. Every other species in the galaxy was weak by comparison. The Altarians, with their gentle breezes and warm sunshine. The Centauri with their stable gravity and predictable seasons. The Rigel colonies with their perfect atmospheric balance. All of them had been conquered, enslaved, or destroyed because they had never truly suffered. They had never earned their place among the stars. Dr. Nora Blake adjusted the sensors on the research vessel Endurance, completely unaware that her readings would soon destroy an empire. The xenobiologist had spent years preparing for this moment. Humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. She checked the atmospheric readings one more time, ensuring Earth's data package was accurate. Oxygen at 21%. Nitrogen at 78%. Average temperature 15 degrees Celsius, standard gravity. Everything looked perfectly normal for a life-supporting world. Her colleague, Dr. Ben Torres, was running final calculations on their faster-than-light communication array. The physicist had designed the system specifically for peaceful first contact. Humanity had no weapons aboard the Endurance, no military escort, no defensive systems beyond basic meteorite shields. They had decided years ago that their introduction to galactic society should demonstrate Earth's commitment to peace and scientific cooperation. Ambassador Kate Murphy reviewed her diplomatic protocols for the 100th time. The former United Nations mediator had helped resolve conflicts on Earth for decades, but alien contact was entirely different. Her briefing materials suggested that most galactic civilizations were peaceful traders and explorers. Earth's psychologists had theorized that any species advanced enough for interstellar travel would have evolved. Beyond primitive territorial conflicts, Roy Walsh checked the ship's navigation systems from the bridge. The former military officer had been chosen to command the Endurance specifically because of his calm temperament and diplomatic experience. Unlike the warships of Earth's past, the Endurance was designed for exploration and communication. Its laboratories and meeting rooms spoke of humanity's hope for friendship. Among the stars, none of them realized that their innocent scientific data would be interpreted as a declaration of war by species who measured worth in survival statistics. Earth's pleasant climate readings would mark humanity as another soft-world species ripe for conquest. The Pact's standard response to new civilizations was simple and brutal. Evaluate their homeworld's lethality rating. Assign them an appropriate position in the galactic hierarchy. Enslave or destroy those who refuse to accept their inferior status. The Corvan had perfected this system over 3 millennia. Their evaluation teams could assess any world's dangers within days. Atmospheric toxicity, radiation levels, gravitational stress, temperature extremes, geological instability, and biological hazards all contributed to a species' final worthiness score. Those who scored below Class 5 became slaves. Those who scored above Class 8 earned limited autonomy as Pact vassals. Only Class 10 or higher species could join the Pact as equals. In the deepest archives of Corvan Prime, sealed records contained the evaluation scores that had determined the fate of hundreds of civilizations. The peaceful Deltans had rated Class 2 for their stable, garden world before being assigned to agricultural labor. The proud vegan traders had scored Class 4 for their mildly challenging desert homeworld, before becoming the Pact's primary manufacturing force. The artistic Antarians had rated Class 1 for their Paradise Moon before being sold as entertainment slaves to Pact nobles. The evaluation system was considered perfect because it was based on objective scientific measurements. Radiation that would kill most species within hours. Atmospheric pressure that would crush unprotected bodies. Temperature swings that would freeze blood or boil flesh. Toxic compounds that would dissolve organic matter. Gravitational forces that would snap bones like twigs. These were measurable, undeniable proofs of superiority. High Chancellor Vorth received the automated alert as humanity's first transmission reached Pact space. Another soft-world species announcing their existence with naive hopes of friendship. The preliminary data suggested Earth was even more pathetic than usual. Breathable atmosphere, liquid water, stable climate, normal gravity. The humans would probably rate Class 1 or Class 2 at most. Perfect candidates for the mining operations on Rigel 7, where the previous slave population had recently died from overwork. He assigned the evaluation to Commander Grix, a veteran Corvan officer who had processed dozens of new species over the past century. Grix had a talent for crushing the spirits of newly discovered civilizations. His reports were always thorough, documenting not just environmental data, but also the psychological breaking points of each species. The humans would be no different from any other weak world inhabitants, the massive Corvan. Dreadnought Stormbreaker began its journey toward the Sol system within hours of receiving the assignment. Its hull was designed to survive the hurricane force. Wines of Corvan Prime, reinforced with metals forged in radioactive furnaces. The ship's environmental systems could simulate the harsh conditions of any Pact homeworld, allowing the crew to maintain their edge even during long voyages through the soft vacuum of space. Dr. Blake was monitoring the communication array when the first response arrived from galactic civilization. The message was brief and formal, announcing that representatives of the Galactic Deathworld Pact would arrive within one standard galactic month to conduct a standard evaluation of humanity's homeworld and species. The transmission included basic translation protocols and a warning that any aggressive actions would result in immediate sterilization of the Sol system. Ambassador Murphy felt a chill reading the message despite its diplomatic language. The term Deathworld Pact seemed ominous, but Earth's xenolinguists assured her it was probably a translation error. Many species might use dramatic names for their peaceful alliances. The evaluation process was likely a standard procedure for welcoming new civilizations into galactic society. Humanity had nothing to fear from honest scientific assessment. None of them suspected that Earth's evaluation would break the Pact's classification system completely. Commander Grix had evaluated 43 species during his long career, and Earth looked like the easiest assignment yet. The blue and green world spinning peacefully in its star's habitable zone showed every sign of being another soft paradise. No raging storms visible from orbit, no volcanic activity lighting up the night side, no radiation signatures that would indicate dangerous stellar bombardment. The preliminary scans suggested Earth would barely register on the Pact's lethality scale. His evaluation team began their standard procedures as the Stormbreaker entered Earth's solar system. Dr. Thek, the ship's xenobiologist, started atmospheric analysis while Engineer Vex mapped geological activity. Science Officer now monitored radiation levels and gravitational anomalies. The process had become routine over the decades. Soft-world species always lived on soft worlds, and their worthiness ratings reflected their pampered existence. The first anomaly appeared in the atmospheric data. Dr. Thek stared at his readings in confusion before running the analysis again. Earth's atmosphere contained 21% oxygen, which was normal for life-supporting worlds. But the pressure readings were impossible. At sea level, Earth's atmospheric pressure was only slightly above the minimum needed to sustain liquid water. Yet the scans showed humans living comfortably at various altitudes where the pressure dropped to levels that would cause decompression sickness in most species. Even more puzzling were the temperature readings. Earth's surface temperatures ranged from minus 40 degrees to plus 50 degrees Celsius in different regions and seasons. Most soft-world species required environmental suits to survive such extremes, yet human settlements existed in both temperature ranges. The evaluation team found cities built in deserts where daytime heat would kill unprotected Corvan warriors, and other settlements in Arctic regions where nighttime cold would freeze. Thraxi-blood solid. Engineer Vex reported even stranger geological findings. Earth's crust was riddled with active fault lines that generated earthquakes regularly. Hundreds of active volcanoes dotted the planet's surface, some recently active enough to threaten nearby human populations. The oceanic trenches reached depths that would challenge even Keth pressure suits. Mountain ranges soared to heights where atmospheric pressure and oxygen levels would incapacitate most known species, yet humans seemed to treat these deadly features as recreational opportunities. Vex's detailed scans revealed humans deliberately climbing the highest mountains for sport, diving to crushing depths without protection, and building cities directly on active fault lines. The concept made no sense to the Corvan engineer, whose species had spent millions of years learning to avoid their homeworld's dangers rather than seeking them out. Science. Officer Now's radiation readings provided the most disturbing data of Earth's magnetic field fluctuated in ways that periodically exposed the surface to dangerous cosmic radiation. Solar flares regularly bombarded the planet with energy levels that would force packed colonies into underground shelters. Yet human civilization showed no signs of radiation-adapted architecture or emergency evacuation procedures. They appeared to simply ignore threats that would terrify veteran Ixari survivors. Commander Grix ordered direct contact with the human representatives to resolve these apparent contradictions. Perhaps the scans were malfunctioning, or the humans had developed advanced environmental controls that weren't immediately visible. The evaluation team prepared to beam down to Earth's surface, expecting to find a typical soft-world paradise hidden beneath misleading sensor readings. Dr. Blake greeted the alien visitors at a specially prepared landing site in Colorado. The location had been chosen for its natural beauty and mild climate, intended to showcase Earth's peaceful nature. Snow-capped mountains provided a scenic backdrop, while wildflower meadows demonstrated the planet's biological diversity. A gentle breeze carried the scent of pine trees under clear blue skies. Commander Grix emerged from his environmental suit with visible relief. His initial scans had suggested Earth might be more dangerous than it appeared, but the landing site seemed perfectly safe. The gravity was comfortable, the atmosphere breathable, and the temperature pleasant. Dr. Blake's warm welcome and obvious enthusiasm for peaceful contact reinforced his assumption that humans were another typical soft-world species. The formal evaluation interview began with standard questions about Earth's environmental challenges. Dr. Blake answered honestly, describing her planet as generally comfortable for human life. She mentioned that some regions were too hot or cold for permanent settlement, and that certain areas experienced dangerous weather, but emphasized that humans had adapted to live almost everywhere on Earth's surface. Dr. Thek asked about atmospheric pressure variations. Expecting to hear about protective equipment or environmental suits, Dr. Blake explained that humans adjusted naturally to altitude changes, though some people experienced temporary discomfort at very high elevations. She mentioned that professional mountain climbers regularly ascended peaks where the air was too thin for most people, but described this as an athletic achievement rather than a survival ordeal. Engineer Vex inquired about earthquake preparedness and volcanic hazards. Dr. Blake acknowledged that geological activity posed risks to human settlements, but explained that building codes and early warning systems usually prevented catastrophic damage. She seemed genuinely puzzled by his questions about evacuation protocols for seismic events, mentioning that most humans simply reinforced their buildings and continued living in earthquake zones. Science. Officer Now asked about radiation exposure and solar flare protection. Dr. Blake admitted that cosmic radiation was a concern for space travelers and high-altitude flights, but said that Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field provided adequate protection for surface dwellers. She mentioned that some occupations involved radiation exposure, but described this as a manageable workplace hazard rather than an existential threat. The evaluation team exchanged confused glances as Dr. Blake's casual responses accumulated. Her descriptions of Earth's environment matched their instrumental readings, but her attitude suggested she didn't recognize the deadly nature of her own planet. Either humans had developed incredible resistance to environmental hazards, or they were too naive to understand the dangers surrounding them. Commander Grix decided to test human environmental tolerance directly. He proposed a tour of different Earth biomes to better understand human adaptation. Dr. Blake eagerly agreed, suggesting visits to various climate zones and geographical features. She recommended locations that would showcase Earth's diversity. Unaware that she was leading the evaluation team into increasingly dangerous territory, the tour began in Arizona's Sonoran Desert, where summer temperatures regularly exceeded 45 degrees Celsius. The Corvin evaluation team required full environmental protection, while Dr. Blake wore only light clothing and a hat. She cheerfully explained how desert peoples had learned to find water and shelter, describing survival techniques as cultural traditions rather than desperate necessities. Next came Alaska's North Slope, where winter temperatures dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. The aliens watched in amazement as human workers operated machinery in conditions that would kill most pack species within minutes. Dr. Blake explained that cold weather clothing and heated shelters made Arctic work perfectly manageable, treating the environment as an occupational challenge rather than a death-world threat. The ocean diving demonstration off Hawaii's coast provided the most shocking revelation. Human freedivers descended to depths where water pressure should have crushed their bodies, holding their breath for minutes at a time. While swimming among creatures that would terrorize most galactic species, Dr. Blake described this as recreational diving, a popular tourist activity enjoyed by millions of humans. By the end of the evaluation tour, Commander Grix faced an unprecedented problem. Earth's environmental data clearly qualified it as a Class 12 extreme death world by Pact standards, combining lethal features from multiple hazard categories. Yet humans treated their planet as a comfortable home and actively sought out its most dangerous aspects for entertainment. The evaluation report would either expose the Pact's classification system as fundamentally flawed, or prove that humanity was the most environmentally adapted species in known galactic history. Either conclusion would destroy the carefully maintained hierarchy that had kept the Pact in power for 3 millennia. Commander Grix stared at his completed report, knowing that transmitting it would change everything. The emergency session of the Pact Ruling Council had been called for the first time in 4 centuries. High Chancellor Vorth paced the obsidian floors of the Great Chamber while his fellow leaders studied Commander Grix's impossible evaluation report. The ancient hall had witnessed the conquest of hundreds of worlds, but never a crisis that threatened the very foundation of their empire. Supreme Matriarch Issa of the Thraxi coiled her serpentine body around her throne, poison sacs visibly swollen with stress. Her species had evolved in toxic swamps where a single breath of unfiltered air would dissolve lung tissue. Yet the human evaluation showed Earth's industrial regions contained atmospheric pollutants that exceeded Thraxi homeworld toxicity levels. And humans worked in these areas without protective breathing apparatus. War. Chief Korvac of the Velkin slammed his ice-scarred fist against the council table. His people had conquered frozen wastelands where exposed flesh would freeze solid in seconds. The human data indicated that Earth experienced ice ages that lasted thousands of years. And humans had not only survived these events but had actually thrived and expanded their population during the coldest periods. Fusion. Lord Nexer of the Ixari studied the radiation readings with growing alarm. His species had rebuilt civilization on a world bombarded by lethal cosmic rays after their sun went nova. Earth's magnetic field fluctuations periodically exposed the surface to radiation levels that would force Ixari settlements into deep underground bunkers. Yet humans continued their surface activities during these events as if nothing was happening. Deep Commander Tadal of the Keth remained submerged in his pressure tank, analyzing the oceanic data through translated displays. His people had evolved in crushing depths where water pressure could implode reinforced metal structures. The human evaluation showed free divers descending to depths that would require specialized pressure suits for Keth warriors. And they did. This for recreation. High Chancellor Vorth broke the stunned silence. The Corvan leader had survived atmospheric storms that could strip mountains bare. Yet Earth's hurricane and tornado systems generated wind speeds that exceeded anything recorded. On Corvan Prime, more disturbing was the human response to these events. Instead of fleeing or seeking underground shelter, some humans actively pursued these storms to study and photograph them. The classification system that had maintained pack supremacy for 3 millennia was breaking down completely. Earths combined. Environmental hazards should have produced a sterile wasteland or a species of ultimate survivors. Instead, humans treated their death world as a pleasant garden and actively sought out additional dangers for entertainment. The psychological implications were staggering. Commander Grix's report contained even more troubling details. Humans engaged in activities called extreme sports that deliberately exposed them to mortal danger. They jumped from aircraft at high altitudes, descended underground into unmapped cave systems, and climbed vertical rock faces without safety equipment. Some humans spent their leisure time in environments that would challenge trained packed warriors. The evaluation team had documented human cities built directly on active volcanic slopes, with residents who refused to relocate despite regular eruptions. Other settlements existed in tornado corridors where violent storms struck repeatedly each year. Coastal cities endured hurricanes that would devastate packed military installations. Yet humans rebuilt and continued living in these areas by choice. Even human agriculture defied packed understanding. They grew food crops in deserts using scarce water resources, cultivated plants in Arctic regions where growing seasons lasted only months, and farmed on mountainsides where landslides regularly destroyed terraced fields. Instead of abandoning these marginal areas, humans developed increasingly sophisticated techniques to work in hostile conditions. Word of the human evaluation began spreading through pack space despite official attempts at classification. Lower-ranking officers who had processed the initial data shared information with colleagues. Maintenance crews on packed vessels overheard conversations between senior staff. Scientists working on analysis teams leaked details to academic networks. The impossible truth about humanity could not be contained. On the mining world of Rigel 7, enslaved Altarian workers whispered about the soft-world people who lived on a planet more dangerous than any packed homeworld. The rumors gave hope to species who had accepted their inferior status for generations. If the evaluation system could be wrong about humans, perhaps it was wrong about other species as well. Human engineer Tom Wright had arrived at Rigel 7 as part of an industrial consulting contract, unaware of the political earthquake his presence would trigger. The mining facility operated in conditions that required full environmental protection for most species. Temperatures fluctuated between freezing and boiling. Atmospheric pressure varied unpredictably. Chemical vapors from the extraction process would burn unprotected flesh. Tom worked alongside the alien crews wearing only basic protective gear and a breathing mask. He complained about the heat during his shifts but described the working conditions as similar to deep mining operations on Earth. His casual attitude toward environmental hazards that terrified veteran packed workers became the subject of intense observation and secret recordings. The psychological impact spread beyond enslaved populations to packed citizens themselves. Young Corvan warriors began questioning why humans could survive storms worse than those on Corvan Prime while treating the experience as recreational activity. Thraxi scientists wondered how humans could work in toxic environments without the biological adaptations their species had developed over millions of years. Ambassador Murphy's diplomatic meetings with packed representatives grew increasingly tense as alien officials probed for evidence of human environmental modification technology. They could not accept that any species could survive on a Class 12 death world using only natural, biological adaptation. The questions became so persistent that Murphy began to suspect the aliens were looking for military applications of human survival techniques. Dr. Blake's research into pack species biology revealed the source of their confusion. Each species had evolved extreme specializations to survive their hostile homeworlds. The Corvan had developed reinforced skeletal structures and redundant organ systems. The Thraxi had evolved complex detoxification mechanisms and acidic blood chemistry. The Velkin had modified their metabolism to function in extreme cold. Humans showed no such extreme specializations. Their biology was remarkably generalized, capable of functioning in a wide range of conditions but not optimized for any specific environment. This adaptability had allowed them to colonize every biome on Earth, but it also made their survival abilities seem impossible to species who had paid a high evolutionary price for their environmental resistance. The revelation that human adaptability was psychological rather than biological struck at the heart of Pact ideology. Their entire social system was based on the assumption that harsh environments produce superior beings through natural selection. If humans could master deathworld conditions through cultural adaptation and technological innovation, then environmental extremity was not the measure of worthiness. Dr. Ben Torres inadvertently accelerated the crisis by publishing a comparative analysis of galactic planetary environments. His scientific paper was intended to share knowledge and promote understanding between species. Instead, it provided mathematical proof that Earth was more environmentally challenging than any known Pact homeworld when all hazard factors were combined. The paper spread through galactic academic networks faster than any previous publication. Enslaved species translated it into hundreds of languages and distributed copies throughout Pact space. The scientific data became a manifesto for those who had been deemed unworthy based on their homeworld's supposed environmental weakness. Chancellor Vorth realized that the human evaluation had initiated the collapse of everything the Pact had built. Their authority rested on the fundamental premise that environmental adversity created natural superiority. If a species from the most dangerous known world could achieve mastery through cooperation and innovation rather than biological adaptation, then the entire hierarchy was meaningless. The Galactic Deathworld Pact faced its first existential crisis in 3,000 years, and it had been triggered by a peaceful scientific mission from a species that did not even realize they lived on a death world. The leaked data hit galactic networks like a digital tsunami, spreading faster than Pact censorship protocols could respond. Dr. Kellen, an X-ray radiation specialist working in the archives of Nexus Station, had been the first to break ranks. His analysis of human radiation tolerance showed that Earth's surface regularly experienced cosmic ray bombardment that would force his people into emergency shelters. Yet humans continued their daily activities as if nothing was happening. Within hours of Dr. Kellen's revelation, similar reports emerged from scientists across Pact space. Each species discovered that humans routinely survived conditions that would challenge their own specialized adaptations. The psychological impact was devastating to warriors who had built their identities around surviving. Impossible odds, on the industrial moon of Titan Delta, human mechanic Lisa Chun had become an unwitting symbol of the revolution brewing in Pact space. The maintenance facility operated in conditions that pushed environmental systems to their limits. Methane storms raged across the surface with winds that could shred unprotected equipment. Temperature swings between day and night cycles would crack inferior metals. Atmospheric pressure fluctuated unpredictably as the moon orbited through gravitational anomalies. Lisa worked these shifts wearing standard industrial gear while her Velkin supervisor Frost remained sealed inside a full environmental suit rated for Arctic combat conditions. She chatted cheerfully about the weather, reminding her of winter camping trips in the Canadian Rockies, completely unaware that her casual observations were being recorded and analyzed by intelligence operatives. Throughout Pact space, the recordings spread through underground networks of enslaved species and dissatisfied Pact citizens. Hearing a human describe Class 10 Deathworld conditions as comparable to recreational activities shattered fundamental assumptions about natural hierarchy and survival superiority. If humans could treat Vulcan-level environmental extremes as camping weather, what did that say about the Pact's claims to evolutionary superiority, Master Engineer? Frost experienced his species' first recorded case of existential crisis. The Vulcan had spent his entire life taking pride in his people's ability to function in frozen wastelands that would kill most galactic species. His military service record included commendations for surviving in conditions that had claimed the lives of lesser warriors. Yet this human treated his homeworld's environmental challenges as minor inconveniences. The crisis deepened when Captain Roy Walsh visited Keth Deep Command's underwater research facility. The installation had been built in crushing oceanic depths that demonstrated Keth mastery over the most hostile aquatic environments in known space. The water pressure at the facility's operating depth would implode most starship hulls. Specialized viewing ports were manufactured from crystalline materials that cost more than entire planetary defense systems. Roy descended to the facility, using standard human diving equipment, making casual conversation with his Keth escorts about deep-sea exploration on Earth. He mentioned that human freedivers regularly reached depths comparable to the research station without any mechanical assistance, holding their breath for minutes while swimming among predators that would terrify most galactic species. Deep Commander Tidal watched the humans' relaxed behavior through multiple monitoring systems, searching for evidence of hidden technology or biological modifications. Roy showed no signs of pressure adaptation beyond what any human would possess. His diving gear was primitive compared to Keth environmental systems, yet he functioned normally at depths that represented the extreme limits of Keth engineering capability. The psychological breakdown spread to the highest levels of Keth leadership when Roy mentioned that humans enjoyed swimming with sharks for recreation. The concept of deliberately entering water with apex predators for entertainment was so alien to Keth thinking that several officers required emergency psychological intervention. Their entire cultural identity was built around conquering hostile waters. Yet humans treated similar environments as leisure destinations. Dr. Blake's research team accelerated the Pact's collapse by publishing their comparative study of galactic biomes in the Journal of Xenoecology. The paper was intended as a peaceful contribution to interspecies scientific knowledge, documenting the fascinating variety of environments that had produced intelligent life throughout the galaxy. The authors had no idea their work would become the most inflammatory document in galactic history. The study's mathematical analysis proved that Earth combined environmental hazards from all known Deathworld categories into a single planetary system. Atmospheric extremes that matched Corvin storm worlds. Chemical toxicity levels comparable to Thraxi poison planets. Temperature ranges that encompassed Vulcan ice worlds. Radiation exposure equivalent to Ixari wasteland conditions. Pressure variations that challenged Keth. Deep water adaptations. More disturbing was the paper's revelation that humans had not simply survived these combined hazards, but had thrived and diversified across all of Earth's environmental zones. The species showed no signs of the extreme biological specializations that had allowed Pact species to survive their respective homeworlds. Instead, humans appeared to master hostile conditions through cultural adaptation, technological innovation, and psychological resilience. The paper spread through galactic academic networks faster than any previous publication. University libraries reported unprecedented demand for copies. Scientific conferences were canceled as researchers abandoned their scheduled topics to debate the implications of human environmental adaptation. The document was translated into hundreds of languages and distributed through both official and underground channels. Enslaved species across Pact space seized upon the paper as scientific proof that the environmental hierarchy was fundamentally flawed. If the most environmentally challenging planet in known space had produced a species with no extreme biological adaptations, then environmental adversity was not the determining factor in evolutionary superiority. The implications undermined every aspect of Pact ideology and social organization. the Altarians were among the first to reframe their homeworld's characteristics using human evaluation criteria. Their peaceful planet experienced solar flares that would sterilize most packed worlds, requiring sophisticated magnetic field manipulation to maintain surface habitability. What had been dismissed as garden world technology was actually advanced environmental engineering that exceeded packed capabilities. The Centauri Collective revealed that their gentle homeworld experienced gravitational fluctuations caused by orbital resonance with multiple stellar companions. The tidal forces would crush unprepared visitors, requiring constant adaptation that their species had internalized over millions of years. Their supposedly soft world existence actually demanded environmental flexibility that surpassed most pack specializations, dozens of previously subjugated species began re-examining their homeworlds through the lens of human environmental classification. Desert worlds revealed hidden water management systems. Ocean worlds showed evidence of pressure adaptation techniques. Forest worlds demonstrated atmospheric processing capabilities. Each revelation further eroded the pack's claims to environmental superiority. The revolution gained momentum when human consultant Tom Wright published his observations of working conditions throughout pack space. His industrial report compared alien facility environments to similar operations on Earth, consistently noting that packed installations were less challenging than comparable human workplaces. Mining operations that terrorized alien workers were described as equivalent to standard Earth extraction facilities. Tom's casual mentions of human industrial history provided the most damaging evidence against packed environmental supremacy. He described how human workers had operated in conditions that exceeded the environmental tolerances of all packed species combined. Deep mines that reached temperatures and pressures comparable to planetary cores. Chemical plants that produced atmospheric toxins more lethal than Thraxi homeworld conditions. Arctic operations that functioned in cold that would kill Vulcan explorers. The revelation that humans had deliberately created working environments more hostile than natural death worlds shocked even veteran packed warriors. The concept of voluntarily exposing workers to lethal conditions for industrial purposes was beyond their comprehension. Most pack species had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to avoid environmental hazards, not create additional ones. Ambassador Murphy found herself negotiating not just for humanity, but for a complete restructuring of galactic civilization. The diplomatic situation had moved far beyond simple first contact protocols. Pact leadership faced the choice between acknowledging human environmental superiority and watching their empire collapse from internal contradictions, or attempting to suppress information that had already spread beyond any hope of containment. The Galactic Deathworld Pact's 3,000-year reign was ending not through military conquest or political revolution, but through the simple scientific revelation that their fundamental assumptions about environmental adaptation and species hierarchy were completely wrong. Humanity had doomed the Pact without firing a single shot or making any aggressive moves. They had simply existed, and their existence made the Pact's ideology impossible to maintain. The first crack in the Pact's unity came from an unexpected source. War Chief Korvac of the Vulcan announced his species' withdrawal from the Alliance during what would be remembered as the last formal session of the ruling council. His ice-scarred features showed a mixture of rage and grudging respect as he declared that any species capable of treating Vulcan-level cold as recreational camping deserved recognition as environmental equals. The Corvan response was swift and desperate. High Chancellor Vorth attempted to maintain Pact authority by declaring humans a special case that did not invalidate the existing hierarchy. Earth would be classified as a unique anomaly, its inhabitants granted honorary status without affecting the rankings of other species. The proposal satisfied no one and convinced even fewer. Supreme Matriarch Issa of Athraxi coiled in agitation as reports arrived of slave revolts spreading across the industrial sectors. Enslaved Altarians had seized control of 3 manufacturing facilities, declaring that their solar flare-resistant technology proved they were environmental equals to any Pact species. The rebellion was spreading faster than military forces could respond. Fueled by scientific data that legitimized their claims to worthiness, the psychological foundation of Pact supremacy crumbled as each member species faced evidence that humans exceeded their specialized environmental adaptations. Fusion Lord Nexer's attempts to maintain Ixari superiority collapsed when human radiation workers demonstrated tolerance levels that surpassed his people's evolved resistance. The technological infrastructure that had supported Pact civilization for millennia began shutting down as enslaved populations abandoned their assigned roles. Dr. Blake found herself at the center of a galactic transformation she had never intended to cause. Her xenobiology research station became an impromptu embassy as species after species requested scientific evaluation of their homeworld environments using human classification standards. The requests came not from Pact leadership but from liberation movements that had seized control of entire star systems. The Rigel Commonwealth declared independence first, led by former slaves who had witnessed human engineers working in conditions that challenged their Pact overseers. The revolution succeeded because Pact forces could not function in the industrial environments their former slaves had mastered through generations of forced labor. Mining facilities became fortresses that Pact warriors could not assault without environmental protection that limited their combat effectiveness. Captain Roy Walsh established the Galactic Rescue Service in response to humanitarian crises that erupted as Pact control collapsed. Human adaptability proved invaluable for evacuation operations in environments too hostile for other species to navigate. The rescue teams became symbols of cooperation and mutual aid that contrasted sharply with the Pact's philosophy of domination through environmental superiority. The service's first major operation saved thousands of Deltran refugees trapped on a world experiencing solar flare bombardment. Pact evacuation protocols required months of preparation and specialized shielding that was not available in emergency situations. Human rescue teams deployed immediately with standard radiation gear and extracted the entire population before Pact authorities could organize their response. The rescue operation's success demonstrated that environmental challenges could be overcome through cooperation and shared knowledge rather than individual species superiority. Human teams worked alongside Deltran guides who understood local conditions, creating evacuation strategies that neither species could have developed alone. The collaborative approach became a model for the emerging galactic civilization. Ambassador Murphy's diplomatic efforts evolved from simple first contact negotiations to mediating the transition toward a completely new form of interspecies government. The Galactic Adaptation Alliance emerged from emergency conferences as Pact authority collapsed. Unlike the hierarchical structure of the old system, the Alliance recognized that every species possessed unique environmental specializations that contributed to galactic civilization. The Alliance's founding principles explicitly rejected environmental determinism and species ranking based on homeworld lethality. Instead, the new government celebrated diversity of adaptation as a source of strength rather than division. Corvin storm navigation expertise became valuable for weather prediction services. Thraxi chemical resistance enabled safer industrial processes. Vulcan cold weather techniques improved life support systems throughout the galaxy. Dr. Ben Torres led the scientific committee that established new environmental classification standards based on cooperation rather than competition. The revised system measured planetary challenges as opportunities for technological development and cultural adaptation rather than tests of biological superiority. Species were evaluated on their contributions to solving environmental problems rather than their ability to survive in isolation. The transformation of Pact space accelerated as former member species embraced the alliance model. The Corvin were among the most enthusiastic converts, fascinated by human storm-chasing techniques that revealed new approaches to weather prediction and atmospheric research. Young Corvin scientists began collaborating with human meteorologists to develop early warning systems that protected settlements throughout the galaxy. The Thraxi Chemical expertise became invaluable for developing safer industrial processes and environmental cleanup technologies. Their evolved resistance to toxic compounds allowed them to work in contaminated areas that would require extensive protection for other species, but they began sharing their knowledge to help other civilizations develop better safety protocols. Rather than using their abilities as proof of superiority, Vulcan Iceworld techniques revolutionized life support systems for space exploration and colonization efforts. Their mastery of extreme cold environments enabled the development of improved preservation technologies and resource extraction methods for frozen worlds. The collaboration between Vulcan engineers and human Arctic specialists created innovations that neither species could have achieved independently. The Ixari radiation expertise proved essential for cleanup operations on worlds damaged by stellar bombardment or industrial accidents. Their evolved resistance allowed them to work in areas too dangerous for other species, but they began training mixed teams that combined Ixari biological adaptation with human technological solutions to expand the range of environments that could be safely restored. The Keth deep water mastery enabled exploration of oceanic worlds that had been considered too dangerous for colonization. Their pressure adaptation techniques were combined with human diving technology to create hybrid systems that opened new frontiers for aquatic research and resource development. The partnership demonstrated how biological and technological approaches could complement each other. The most dramatic transformation occurred among the formerly enslaved species who had been dismissed as environmentally weak. The Altarians revealed that their solar flare management systems were more sophisticated than anything developed by Pact science. Their peaceful planet required constant magnetic field manipulation to remain habitable, a technological achievement that exceeded the capabilities of species who had claimed environmental superiority. The Centauri Collective's gravitational adaptation techniques proved invaluable for space station construction and asteroid mining operations. Their ability to function in variable gravity fields had been developed through millions of years of evolution on a world with complex orbital mechanics. The skills that had been dismissed as soft world weakness became essential for expanding civilization beyond planetary surfaces. Dozens of liberation movements succeeded as formerly subjugated species demonstrated that their homeworld challenges had produced valuable specializations that had been overlooked by the Pact's crude classification system. Desert world water management, forest world atmospheric processing, and ocean world pressure adaptation all became recognized as sophisticated environmental technologies, rather than signs of evolutionary weakness. The economic transformation accompanied the political changes as trade relationships shifted from extraction and exploitation to cooperation and mutual benefit. Species that had been forced to provide raw materials became partners in developing new technologies and exploring previously inaccessible environments. The alliance economy grew rapidly as environmental specializations were combined rather than ranked against each other. Human colonies began appearing throughout former Pact space, but not as conquerors or rulers. Instead, human settlers worked alongside other species to develop worlds that had been considered too challenging for single-species colonization. Mixed communities combined the environmental adaptations of multiple species to create settlements that could thrive in conditions that would defeat any individual group. The first joint colony on Kepler 442b demonstrated the potential of cooperative environmental adaptation. The world combined features that challenged every known species with radiation levels that stressed Ixari tolerance, atmospheric toxicity that pushed Thraxi limits, temperature extremes that tested Vulcan endurance, pressure variations that challenged Keth adaptation, and storm systems that exceeded Corvin experience. No single species could have colonized Kepler 442b using traditional Pact methods, but the combined expertise of the Alliance made settlement possible. Human generalist adaptation provided the coordination and innovation necessary to integrate multiple specialized approaches into a unified colonization strategy. The colony became a symbol of what could be achieved through cooperation rather than domination, Dr. Blake's final research report documented the complete transformation of galactic civilization within 5 years of first contact. The xenobiology database that had once ranked species by homeworld lethality became a collaborative resource for sharing environmental adaptation techniques. Her work shifted from classification to facilitation as scientists throughout the galaxy contributed to understanding how different approaches to environmental challenge could be combined for mutual benefit. The Galactic Deathworld Pact's 3-millennium reign ended not with conquest or revolution, but with the simple recognition that environmental diversity was a source of strength rather than division. Humanity's arrival had doomed the Pact by proving that cooperation and adaptation were more powerful than specialization and domination. The galaxy became a richer and more diverse place as species that had been isolated by artificial hierarchies began working together to explore new worlds and develop new technologies. The Alliance's motto, carved into the memorial that replaced the Pact's throne room, captured the transformation that humanity had made possible. Environmental challenge is not a test of worth but an opportunity for growth. Ambassador Murphy's final diplomatic report to Earth described a galaxy where species were valued for their unique contributions rather than ranked by arbitrary measures of environmental hardship. The peaceful first contact mission that had been intended to join an existing galactic community had instead created an entirely new form of interspecies civilization. The transformation was complete, but the work of building a cooperative galactic society was just beginning. Humanity had doomed the Galactic Deathworld Pact by existing, and in doing so had opened possibilities for exploration and cooperation that no single species could have imagined. The galaxy's future belonged not to the strongest or most adapted, but to those willing to work together toward common goals.